Welcome to Guest of the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. This week's setlist curator for Heat 3 of the Tournament of Champions is Sam Coturri. Sam is a second-generation winemaker from Sonoma County. He's the proprietor of Sonoma's 16600 Winery and co-host of the super popular The Winemakers Podcast. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
Sam's Winery 16600 is also kind enough to be providing this week's prize pack. Over 40 years, Phil Coturri, Sam's dad, merged the ethos of his back-to-the-land hippie community with his life in wine growing when he converted Dos Limonos vineyard to organic viticulture. 16600 embraces the essential opportunity wine provides. The opportunity to have fun, make friends, build community, and celebrate the moment. Thanks Sam, Phil, and everyone over at 16600. Here's how the game works. We'll play the first part of a Grateful Dead live track, and each contestant will use the messaging system to silently guess which year the performance is from. Contestants who are all on a video conference together can message in their guesses at any time during the clip or in the 10 seconds after it concludes. So I'm going to play 5 tracks of Sam's choosing, and whichever contestant is the least number of years off over the 5 tracks advances to the Tournament of Champions final to face off against Gavin and Steve. All right, we'll re-meet the Deadheads in a moment, but first, without further ado, the Grateful Dead.
Honest to the point of recklessness, self-centered in the nobody messing with you but you. Your friends are getting most concerned. Loose with the truth, baby, it's your fight. Baby, I hope you don't get burned. When the smoke has cleared, she said, that's what she said to me.
All right, the guesses are in. It was Althea at Oregon County Fair in Veneta on August 28th, 1982. Killer Althea, Sam, back to the farm.
Back to the farm. Yeah, it's the 10-year anniversary of, the Sunshine Daydream show. A crazy, important show in the sort of history of my family's lifetime. That was the first time that my parents got backstage passes. The night before, my mom and dad had been introduced to Billy Kreitzman. My dad had wine and other things from Sonoma. They had a good time, ended up on the floor arm wrestling because Billy wanted to see who was stronger, a drummer or a farmer. And the next day, my mom's birthday, they had backstage passes for the first time. And from then, it was on for the rest of, through 95. Also, I had to throw an Althea in because my daughter's going to listen. She's 5, but she's going to listen. Her name is Althea, and I told her I was doing this, and she said, "You're gonna play Althea Told Me, right?" And I said, "Absolutely, of course." So I got it out of the way first.
Love. So your folks are winemakers as well.
Yeah, my dad was the children of Italian immigrants. My dad and my uncle, and they planted a vineyard in Glen Ellen in the 60s and started making wine in the 70s. But grew up in San Francisco in the 60s and were hippies and came to Sonoma and kind of brought that back to the land hippie movement with them. Started farming organically, making wine naturally before there was such a thing as natural wine in the 70s. In those days, in the 70s, my dad would talk about going to shows in Coturri and, you bring an invoice, the end of the beginning, and you bring an invoice saying that, the venue ordered a case of wine, and you walk into the venue with a case of wine, and all of a sudden you're in and you have a case. So, it was a good time to be around here.
I don't know if this spoils your origin story, but that friendship with the dead, your parents' friendship with the dead, grew and grew, and you ended up being a groomsman at Susanna Millman's wedding.
The ring bearer. I was, I believe, 2 years old. I tell people in the tasting room, we show pictures from Susanna's book. I tell them that I peaked at 3. I was wedding photos with Jerry Garcia. Jerry walked Susanna down the aisle. Wavy Gravy married them. I think Kreitzman was like the best man or something like that, and I was the ring bearer. So there's these photos of like wedding photos, like you do with the family after a wedding ceremony, except for it's Jerry and Wavy and Dennis and Susanna and me and my mom. It was all Dick Lotvala, and my mom was friends with Dick Lotvala from a commune in the 70s. And when Lotvala became, sort of the king of the tapers and the archivist, that was their entree, their connection to the inner circle, as it were.
All hail Dick.
All hail Dick.
It was a great pick, and these guys did well. They were all equally off, actually. Everyone was off by 1 year. Pete and CJ guessed 83. Aron guessed 81. Aron is 52 from Toronto. Why 81?
Unfortunately or fortunately, Jerry's voice is a big barometer for me to guess the year. You can sort of pick out moments of how ragged it is. And I don't have such a fine-tuned ear, but to me, his voice sounded like some 81 shows that I've been listening to lately. So that's why I picked it. But then, when I heard that it was in Vinita, I was like, you should have known. Oops.
Sam, that was damn kind of you to include that one line of Jerry's vocals.
Oh, I liked that. I don't know if it's a flub or if Jerry just decided to drop the last line of that verse, or he doesn't say self-centered to the, and he doesn't say extreme. I don't know. That was why I picked that. One of the reasons I picked that song out of that show.
So when you're naming your daughter, did you know from the outset, like, I'm going to name her Althea, or did you start, I'm going to name her something Grateful Dead-y, and then you decided on Althea?
There's another crazy winery related story. Her due date was around my great grandmother's due date, and her name was Agatha, and we didn't want to name a kid Agatha in 2019. And so we were looking for names that sort of alluded to that, and this woman came into the tasting room named Althea, who'd never heard the song. She was like in her 50s or 60s from the Midwest somewhere. And, we had this sort of transcendent experience. We played the song. She bought t-shirts. She joined the wine club, bought cases of wine, and just was like, had the time of her life. And is still like one of our best customers. And I got home that night, and we were, my wife is 7-8 months pregnant, and we're looking for names. And I told her the story of Althea, who came to the tasting room. And I don't know if she said it or I said it, but one of us said, "Oh, Althea, that might be a good name if we have a daughter." And instantly my wife sobbed. And like every time we mentioned it for 2 weeks, she cried. So we say that Althea named herself. We weren't necessarily looking for Grateful Dead names. It fit. It worked really well. So we went with it. But it was the gods of Althea. The Greek gods told us that was her name.
Yeah. Love that. Pete and CJ both guessed 83. I go to Pete here. He's 51 from Woodbury, Connecticut. Pete, why'd you decide on 83?
The voice, definitely, as Aron said, is the first thing I keyed in on, and it was trending towards that raggedy, kind of nasally 84, 85 Jerry. In fact, I almost picked a little bit of a later year because he sounded kind of ragged. But the tempo of the Althea, earlier Altheas, the tempo seems to be a little bit slower in the earlier ones. And then Brent, he wasn't like super plinky or anything. So it was honestly a little bit of a tough one. So I just split the difference. I was like, 83.
Cool. Yeah. And CJ is 50 from Toledo, Ohio. Were you thinking something similar with your 83 guess, CJ?
Yeah, just the voice, obviously, Jerry's voice kind of got thinner and declined there, from the early to the mid 80s. And so I right away put it in there, and just 83 popped into my head, and I went, a little later, a little earlier, back and forth. And I just decided to come back with the first guess and stick with it.
Great track. These guys have 1 point each. Lowest over 5 songs wins. Let's hear Sam's second pick. The guesses are in. That was Scarlet Begonias Into a Fire on the Mountain at Giants Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey on September 2nd, 1978. Sam, what made you want to choose that one?
Again, all hail Latvala. This is supposedly his favorite Scarlet Fire. Early on in my Deadhead life, Grateful Dead life, backstage, wherever, I somehow discovered that I loved Fire on the Mountain. It was my song. If I was at a show and I heard a fire, that's what I wanted to hear, even as a little kid. So I knew if you heard Scarlet Begonias, you had a pretty good chance that you'd get a Fire on the Mountain. And wherever I was, backstage, kids' room, whatever, I'd make my way out to where my parents were, which was usually on the soundboard, so I could hear Fire on the Mountain. So to hail back to Dick Latvala and to get myself a Scarlet Fire on the show, I had to go with his favorite.
So yeah, I've heard a lot about the kids' room. So a kids' room is just where the kids hang out backstage and they don't care about their parents working. They just want to play with toys and stuff.
Pretty much, it was run by the Hog Farm, by Wavy Gravy and the commune. So it was a little bit of their sort of version of the summer camp that they run, which is a circus and performing arts camp. And they would have these rooms backstage. And I think it was mostly local Bay Area shows. That's where I went as a kid, and it was backstage, and they'd have games and they'd have face painting, and clowns would show up, and just a way to entertain the kids, crew and friends and family or whatever, and keep them out of their parents' hair for a good 3 or 4 hours. And most of the time Wavy was there, and they had a Bill Graham Presents security guard at the front door, and yeah, it was the safest place on the planet.
Killer pick. Pete and CJ both got 78. Aaron guessed 79. CJ, 78. How'd you figure that out?
I think we talked about it before, there's some people that are real technical, and they can tell you what guitar Jerry was playing, and I'm not that guy. I kind of like to get the feeling from everything that's going on. And the feeling that I got from this was, Jerry was working really hard. And I love Keith Godshaw as a player. He was a tremendous player, but he did, towards the end kind of get into that slump. And I think even there was a quote, Jerry kind of complained about how the rest of the band was all playing rhythm and he was playing lead or something to that effect. And so that's what I heard. Just that I'd heard a little bit of Keith on that piano, but just kind of hitting those just same couple of chords repetitively and not really contributing to the melodic part of the song, even though there was a lot going on with the rest of the band members. So, and that was, obviously towards the end, and that was really the beginning of the Fire on the Mountain era. So kind of pointed to 78 for me.
Cool. Pete, also 78.
I couldn't hear Keith, and usually when I can't hear Keith, I think it's 78, almost every time. And it's either he just disappears in the mix, or he's just not playing, or I don't know. I couldn't really pick up keys. The warmth of Phil's bass is always what pulls me closer to 77, 78. There's just a real 76, 77, 78. Phil's bass is just so warm and I don't know, I want to wrap myself up in it. And so that is what pulled me away from 79 towards 78. And then Jerry, his tone, the band is super polished in 77, right? But 78, they start to get a little more raggedy on the edges, a little more, it's hard for me to put into the exact words, but it's just a bit raw, so to speak. It's just not as refined. It starts to loosen up a bit, and that's kind of what I heard in there too.
Wrapping yourself up in Phil's bass, that's so evocative.
When I was seeing the Dead a lot, I remember coming to the realization that the best way to listen to the Grateful Dead is through Phil's bass. And so it took me, many, many shows to start to realize that the only place I ever wanted to be was in the Phil zone at a show. And that was the best way for me, at least, to receive the music. First of all, he was the most consistent musician, I thought, on the stage, night in, night out. And so you could just kind of follow through him, and then everything kind of fell to the side of it and used the foundation.
Thank you, Pete. Aaron, just a shade up at 79.
My needle was flying all over the place. There were moments where I was like, is this is this 84? It's, when the band was like really racing tempos, that I sort of attribute that to some early to mid 80s shows. And I felt like they were just like really, really going fast and really playing hard.
Aaron's point about the tempo is key. That throws me off all the time because there are periods where they're just raging and you're like, is this 85? Is this 7? So that was a tough one.
They play with the tempo a bunch on this one too. You go to the end of Fire as they're like going back to the little Scarlet tease thing that they would do, and the tempo went way down, and they just got it all spaced out, and then brought it back with that the little bump it bump bump Scarlet closer. That was terrible. Please, not musical or technical. Obviously,
I know what you meant.
Yeah, me too. Pete has 1, CJ has 1, Aron has 2. Still anyone's game. Third track of 5.
All the years combined, they melt into a dream. A broken angel sings from a guitar. In the end, it was just a song. Comes crying up the night. Through all the broken dreams and vanished years. Stella Blue. Stella Blue.
Stella Blue, Cal Expo in Sacramento, California on August 4th, 1989. Sam, a local show for you. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, we went to a lot of Cal Expo shows, and I have sort of 2 notes about why I chose that one. First of all, in the spring of 1989, my parents had become really good friends with the Healys and Dr. Don Pearson from Ultrasound. And in the spring of 89, Ultrasound and Myers Sound and the Grateful Dead had put together this new speaker system, and they needed somewhere to test it where they could blast sound for a few days and nobody would complain. And I'm in downtown Sonoma right now. It's like 5 miles up the hill from where I am. They brought a semi truck full of basically like the left side of the stage stack from the summer 89 tour and tested it for 3 days up there. And it was this totally like memorable experience. This truck was way too big for this tiny country road. I wanted to get an summer 89 show in there. Cal Expo again was a home base for us for a lot of these shows. At some point at the Cal Expo shows, I would start going to the show early with Billy Kreitzman, and Billy's roadie was this guy named Billy Grillo, Billy Bullshit. And if he wasn't a Hell's Angel, in my memory of what Billy looks like is he was a Hell's Angel, and he was basically would be my babysitter while Billy would sound check and hang out. And he had this little just off stage, like curtained off dressing rooms. Roadies would hang out in, friends and family, and I would sit there on stage and with Billy Grillo, and all you heard was the drums, and because you were behind the drum stack. But there was a headphone jack, and one night Billy Grillo plugs in the headphones, sits me on a bench, and puts the headphones on my ears as they go into Stella Blue. And he this biker dude like grabs me by the shoulder and makes me listen to this song. And then it's Stella Blue, and it's like the antithesis of everything, this terrifying biker guy stood for in my mind. And then I look up for him, as they're getting to the climax of the lyrics. And I swear to God, he had a tear in his eye. And if I think of like the moment that, I grew up with it, but the reason that I still listen to the Grateful Dead every day and why it still like matters so much in my life, this was like the moment that did it for me. Was Stella Blue from the, I guess it was the soundboard feed on the stage at Cal Expo at some point in my young childhood life. I don't know. I think it was later than 89, but I really like this one. So
How formative was your parents' style of free range parenting, like literally letting you chill with Hell's Angels during Dead shows, pre cell phone in these big arenas? Was it as impactful as it seems on your development as a human? And are you tempted to adopt a similar style of parenting with your daughter Althea now in this more like helicopter parenting time?
I mean, I think that there's definitely like a confidence to talk to adults as a kid and talk to them and because all those adults talked to me like I was just they were not a lot of like baby talking or sort of like helicoptering. It was everybody was kind of out for themselves in a good way, and Althea comes into the tasting room and talks to all the guests in the way that I would go up and talk to people backstage.
So Althea gets free range at the winery.
100%. She's the boss of literally all of us, for sure.
That's really cool. So the Grateful Dead's ethos kind of seems to inform not just your parenting style at the winery, but the winery itself. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I had a TED talk that I was prepared for this, but basically we approach the wine in the same way that the Grateful Dead approached the music, or the music business, which is the wine is what matters the most, and you kind of let the rest of it figure itself out. And if that's your dedication and your passion, hopefully it can be talked about in 50 and 60 years later. So that's definitely the ethos that we have and that, I grew up with. If you want to talk about life lessons from growing up back, it's that the sound and the music is the most important thing and everything else sort of falls in place.
In music, caring about your craft looks like listening to each other on stage. It looks like practicing. What does that same care look like in the context of winemaking?
It's tasting all the time, grapes and wine. It's spending enough time in the vineyards that you're making wine from that you can listen and that you can see to, how they're doing and where they are in the, growing season and ripening curve, and having a great team of people and farmers, people who love to farm and be outside and commune with the plants that you work with and trust their instinct on, what's happening out there, and also there's a piece of it that you kind of just like have to let happen because we're doing something, with Mother Nature and the weather and the soil and all these things that are beyond our control. And you just kind of play the hand that you're dealt and try and make the best of it.
And you don't need to be in Sonoma to enjoy the wine, right? You guys ship it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a website that's always a work in progress, but you can go and order wine on the website. We can ship to just about everywhere, although, sorry, Aaron, not Toronto. Obviously, if you're in the area or visiting the area, we love to host people in the tasting house, especially deadheads. You'll feel very much at home. And, and also we throw great concerts, feel like being sort of torchbearers of this community in our own way, that, having music as part of our offerings is super important. So we do shows at the tasting room and, other places around town, dead adjacent or not, but often dead adjacent.
Sick. Thank you, Sam. And thank you for that killer Stella Blow. One person got it. Pete, 89, nice poll. CJ was 88, Aaron was 90. So everyone was right there. Pete, why 89?
I don't know. I think, Jerry sounded really strong on that. And there is a period there in the late 80s where Jerry does sound really strong. And I tend to associate that mostly with 89. And just kind of the touch that Brent was putting on it, the type of synths that he was using there, also kind of put it in that direction. And just a beautiful version. Stella Blue, I feel like, is one of those songs that just ages like a fine wine, just since we're talking about wine, but it really is one of those songs. And I actually just said the other day, it's interesting because Sam was talking about this, about his daughter and that kind of stuff. And I was saying to my wife the other day, I've got kids that are, 19 and 17, so a little older. But I was saying to her that song, Stella Blue, came on on Grateful Dead radio, and I was telling her, I was like, I can't. As I've gotten older, I can barely make it through that song without getting like choked up. It is one of those songs that so much of the Grateful Dead writing, Robert Hunter's writing in particular, kind of reveals itself to you in a lifetime. You need to just experience a certain amount of life to get this. I mean, when I was 20 years old, seeing Stella Blue, sure, it touched me, but I wasn't about to cry to it. I hadn't had that life experience yet. I didn't know what broken dreams were truly at that point, right? Like, all of it. Anyway, I want to thank you, Sam, for playing that. I thought it was just, I'm going to go and listen to that version after this. Like, so I don't know, 89.
Is there another song, Pete, that you feel like as you've matured has taken on new meaning?
Comes a Time is a song that really hits me hard too. I would say Comes a Time and Stella Blue are probably my two favorite Jerry ballads for that reason, because they're just, I don't know, they just hit me really hard. And again, certain life experiences just help you to understand songs a bit better.
Thanks, Pete. Aaron, you guessed 90. Right on it. Why 90?
Coin toss, 89-90.
Aaron, so you saw a lot of shows towards the end of the Dead's run. Are there any songs to you that are more poignant now that you have more life experience?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's songs that sort of hit me harder. I mean, my appreciation for a number of songs, like I'm not even going to start the list, has changed. It's like songs that I would like actually skip previously, and now I found some appreciation for them. But recently, the song that I sort of cast it off as being a little bit on the cheesy side was If I Had the World to Give. And like in the past couple months, I started, because it was like, I think there was only 6 versions played, and I was like, wow, this song could be a standard. And I play really poor piano, but I sat down at the piano. I was like, I'm going to figure out this song. And it was actually a fairly simple song, which I feel that about a lot of Grateful Dead songs. And I think that if you don't even have to be a musician, but if you like love a lot of different genres of music, I think that there's this, you say like, oh, these are actually, I can predict what the next chord is going to be, because, these songs were just written with so many styles in mind and so many influences in mind. Yeah. So If I Had the World to Give, I think is a song that I never really listened to much or gave much credit to. And I love that song now. And the other one is Ro Jimmy. Like that is, I will listen to every single version.
Yeah, you're listening to every Ro Jimmy, right? As part of a project.
So I get a little obsessive about things. Maybe you're the same, but I decided that I was going to listen to every single Ro Jimmy, and because I started just having questions about the instrumentation. There's 2 solos that Jerry takes in the first half of the song, and I was like, first of all, it's sort of an odd place to put guitar solos, especially 2 of them. So I was like, I started breaking down the structure of the song, and I've created a spreadsheet where I'm now listening to every single one, and I'm marking everything from the tempos to the duration to how many bars or how many measures of solos takes in the first and the second one when he plays slide versus when he picks it. Yeah, it's a little fucking obsessive, but I think I'm on to 75 now. Like the first year they played it in 73, they played it 60 times. Like I think it was like 22% of the total times that they played that song were in 73. So.
And you're going to post your findings on Dad Rock Dead, right?
Yeah, I will. I'll write the whole thing up, and 3 people will read it, and they'll all think I'm insane.
Well, I'll be one of the 3.
No.
And then CJ, 88.
Okay, you guys just got my brain all spinning around here, so I'll try to do this in 3 concise parts. So part 1 was, you guys got me thinking about Stella Blue was on Wake of the Flood, and I remember, I think it was David Lemieux talking about how they had to pick between a couple of ballads for that album, and they chose Stella Blue, and they bumped either Ship of Fools or China Doll to Mars Hotel. And personally, I guess throughout my listening years, I've kind of preferred those 2 as far as ballads go, China Doll and Ship of Fools. And maybe I still do, just if I had to, pick one. But I did start to appreciate Stella Blue more, probably around COVID. There is a lot of, emotion in that song. I think people have already talked about it. But why did I pick 88? So it's weird. It wasn't anything to do with the music. There was a little bit of a sound in there, and I guess I'd call it maybe a glitch, like a remnant of the recording. And I remember hearing it in other 88 shows. I think maybe the Oxford, Maine, and maybe some of those Alpine Valley shows. There was this kind of weird, not real echoey, but sort of like they were in a big barrel or something. And I heard that just for a second, and I thought, there was 88 seems to be when that happened a lot. So I went with 88 over 89 or 90. I mean, it was all in there.
Thank you, CJ. China Doll over Stella Blue is an advanced take. I respect it. So Pete has 1, CJ has 2, Aron has 3. Let's hear the fourth of Sam's 5 picks. The guesses are in. That was Dark Star at Springfield Civic Center Arena in Springfield, Massachusetts on March 28th, 1973. Sam, wow. Tell us.
I threw this one in there for a couple reasons, and really it's a hat tip to you and the show, Mike, because I listen to the music differently, having listened to every episode of Guess the Year show as I have, and I've gained appreciation for non-soundboard recordings, for audience recordings, where I would never usually listen to audiences. For 2 years in particular, 78 and 73 in particular, when Kreitzman was at the height of his powers. And I love listening to the show, and it's a, single drummer era show. And you're like, God, single drummer, but he's got 4 arms, I swear to God, or like an extra leg in there on something. And it's just like, I have so much, personal affection for Kreitzman and just like Stan Billy in general, that I wanted to go somewhere where like that just was the vibe of like, it's one drummer, but is it really? If it's one drummer, how is he doing all that?
Thanks for the kind words about Guest of the Year, Sam. Yeah, we've had incredible Deadheads on, including these guys. And of these guys, Aron is the only one who nailed that Dark Star. He guessed 73. Pete and CJ both guessed 74. Aron, hell of a pull. Tell us about it. Did you know you were hearing Dark Star?
No, I didn't know. And, like I said, to me, it could have been 73, 74, 75. Even if you said it was 76 for some reason, I'd believe you. I find that like in 74 and 75, I have a harder time sort of discerning between those 2 years, because I think that that's when they really came into being like this like fiery jamming unit, this iconic sort of, jam style that they had then. And what I heard was like, it was like the sort of primordial version of what they were going to become in that jam. Like, I didn't even know that was Dark Star. I was like, I like a few songs ran through my head, but yeah, Sam, I agree. Like that's this classic Billy playing that really sort of jumped out to me. And it's almost like he was still, and I saying that he was still finding his place as the lone drummer in the band, I don't think that's correct, but there's something about that where I think he was sort of finding his boundaries still at that point. Like, and in some ways he was playing a lot. He was hitting a lot of drums. And I wouldn't say busy, because he's still like, it sounds to me like he's still sort of sitting with a lot of those jazz fundamentals that he had as an early drummer. And that just sort of stood out to me. And there was like also a starkness where everyone wasn't trying to fill the space as far as I could hear. And that was, I was like, 74. But like, again, my gut said 73. And I was like, yeah, this feels a lot like earlier part of that one drummer dead.
Thanks, Aron. Nice breakdown. I love that starkness observation. So Pete and CJ both guessed 74. Pete, why 74?
Honestly, I was literally could have flipped a coin between 73 and 74. I guess it was, Keith hammering away like that. And I was like, I don't know, maybe he's just really feeling it and more comfortable. I don't know. I didn't really have a good reason why I picked 74. It just kind of landed that way. It's interesting because there was one point where I was like, are there two drummers? And I was like, nah, it's just Billy. But it really did for a second there. Aron mentioned it could have been, if somebody said it was 76, I would go, yeah, I could have been convinced of that.
For a second, I was totally thrown. I'm like, no, maybe there are two drummers here.
Yeah, this is insane. It's so good, though. I mean, again, great pick, Sam. I'm going to go and listen to that. That was really cool.
It's an early Dark Star Eyes too.
Yeah, nice.
It's a good show. I definitely putting this together, listened to a lot of that show, this whole list,
CJ, 74 as well.
Yeah, that was the first thing that popped into my head, going back to the technical versus the feeling thing. That was my first feeling. And then my technical brain kicked in and said, that's 73 Bobby, dude. Like that's how he's playing. And well, shit. And then I thought, well, and there's that 74 fill sound, that wall of sound, big bass thing. And I wasn't hearing that, but then I was like, but man, go back with your feelings. So I went back to 74. But like you guys all said, I mean, the drums were out of this world. I wanted to just keep listening to them because I was searching for, is there two? Is there one? I mean, there's only one, but damn, there's a lot going on. But yeah, I think we all had some of the same thoughts, and really it's just damn good music.
So you thought you heard 73 Bobby, and it turns out you did. What were you hearing that was pointing you that direction?
So in 73, as compared to 72, Bobby started doing a lot more. It's hard for me to even describe it without like making weird noises with my mouth, but like, wow, wow, like just going kind of up and down, doing a little more that wavy rhythm, I guess I'd call it. And so he was doing that in there, not the same as he'd do on like, one of the cowboy songs or something, but just matched up with what I remember hearing from a lot of 73 shows.
Great tip. Thank you. So it's a dead heat going into the fifth of 5 songs. Pete has 2, Aron has 3, CJ has 3. We'll hear Sam's fifth and final pick in a second. But first, Sam, we've heard some clues about how you got into the Dead. You were literally brought to them. There's that Stella Blue moment. Was there anything else that really turned you on to the band as an adult?
It definitely was in my high school years. It's funny. Most of the music that I was exposed to that wasn't Grateful Dead came from going to Camp on a Rainbow and, being a kid who grew up in the country, and I wasn't exposed to a whole lot of, different music. So, I went away from the Dead and way more into hip hop, stuff like that in my early teen years. At some point in high school, I think I sort of started to realize what it was that I grew up with and how special and how important it was. After the Dead were gone and my parents weren't spending their time and money taking us to, hotels in Palo Alto and Sacramento to go to Dead shows, we started going to Tahoe a lot, summer and winter. And the drive from Sonoma to Tahoe is like 3 hours. And we would get a Dix Pix, like the new Dix Pix, before it had hit the world. And you'd put in disc 1. And, by the time you're pulling into Tahoe City, you're finishing disc 3. And I think that's what caught me, because what I asked for my high school graduation present from my parents was the complete set of Dix Pix from Dix Pix 1 to, it was probably in the low 20s by then, maybe. And I absolutely destroyed those CDs like any terrible college student would have, and I wish I still had them. But by the time I was 18, I was fully in and listening all the time.
So it seems like, and maybe I'm reading into this too much, but it seems like on these trips to Tahoe, you began to listen to these Dick's Picks, enjoy them with your folks, and see the band more as not something your parents took you to, but something you all enjoyed together.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some of that is that, definitely I think, when you grow up among a community of rebels, how do you rebel? And, you don't smoke pot and you listen to rap. Right. I mean, I think that was like, that was what I was looking for, to not do that. And, probably, one of the first people he'll listen. Hopefully he'll listen to the show. One of the first people that, whoever got me high was Dennis McNally. So I think that probably influenced that. Or maybe I was rebelling against what the rest of, conformity of 18-year-olds in the early 2000s were doing.
Thank you, Sam. And tell us about the Winemakers podcast. Is it accessible for just the common wine enthusiast?
We definitely try and keep, that's one of the problems with wine is, obviously we can get as high level as we want, but try and bring it down a little bit and make it accessible, make it fun. The best review we ever got was moderately educational but highly entertaining. And I think if we can land on that, time and time again, that's the place to be. So yeah, it's the Winemakers. You can find it on all the pod places, but and we interview mostly winemakers, oftentimes, mostly small producers, people who they work at a big winery, they have a side project, places, stuff you'd never hear about, you're never going to read about in the glossy magazines or anything. So, that's part of the goal, and also to have fun. We've also interviewed non-wine people. One of my favorite shows was the current U.S. poet laureate Ada Limon, grew up in Sonoma. We had her on a show, talking about terroir and poems. We've had G Love, is a huge wine drinker, loves wine. We had him on a show when he was in town a couple of years ago. So, we try and branch out a little bit and not make it. There's a lot of really great, very boring wine podcasts that you can learn a lot on. And we try not to do it.
Thank you, Sam. The Winemakers podcast link will be in the show notes, as is 16600 Winery. Awesome picks, Sam. Let's hear your fifth of five.
Oh man, that was hard.
Sorry, guys.
I think I fucked that one up.
All right, the guesses are in. That was The End of Space at Oakland Alameda County Coliseum on January 26th, 1993. Sam, tell us about it.
So there's a reason that I included Space from Oakland Coliseum. That had
You're
to
a
be
cruel
on.
man. That's why.
And I feel terrible about it. I do. I mean, I knew, and I've listened to the episodes where people throw in Space, and it's just like, it's really a cruel thing to do. But part of it is PSA, or like a confession that I have to make to the nation of deadheads who especially went to those shows. And this is my chance. This is my forum, because they'll hopefully be listening. In the early 90s, Dan Healy had a system. that had speakers lining the auditorium, and there was a joystick on the soundboard that you toggle the joystick and the sound would move around the arena. And one of the many insane things that I've had the opportunity to do in my childhood was sit there on the soundboard during the space and play with that joystick and send the sound around the auditorium, the Oakland Coliseum. So I want to say to those folks out there who were at any of those shows and thought that the sound was moving around the room and weren't sure that it was indeed actually happening, that Healy had this system. He played with it, other people played with it. It was a real thing. Again, one of the things you guys who went to shows not as a kid know what shows you went to, and I have very few, like, I know I was at this show, so I don't know if I was at this one, but listening to this space, I listened to all the Jimmy Rose. I listened to a ton of early 90s Oakland Coliseum spaces because I wanted to find one where it kind of sounded like the sound was moving around the room. And this is one, it was Chinese New Year show. So you had, the dragons dancing through the crowd. So I'm pretty confident I was there because I definitely was at some Chinese New Year shows. What I don't remember is Santana was sitting in for this show. So Santana's sitting in on this space, and you can kind of hear it in that clip. They go into like a little, tease of Oye Como Va. So they're kind of starting to build up to that. And I didn't know if Mike would go into it or not. I didn't really specify, I guess, that you should. But it doesn't really, it's kind of just like hints at it. So that was the choice of this space. And again, my sincere apologies to the contestants.
No, that was excellent. Were your parents especially tied into the Dead universe, or did all the kids have free reign across the entire arena, including, this sound booth?
There was definitely a lot of kids with free reign. And again, this kind of goes back to, what lessons did I take that, maybe I could impart to my kid. I think that I just asked if I could do those things. I think that I was just that precocious little pain in the ass 8-year-old who said, "Oh, can I play with that?" Or maybe they offered. I don't really know. I mean, I know I spent a lot of time around adults growing up and was confident enough to talk to anybody. But particularly, they're really good friends and still are with Dan and Patty Healy, and grew up with their kid, and they're going to be at the tasting room this weekend, kind of thing. So being on the soundboard was, that's where my parents were during shows. And I think that's part of what made it safe or safer, I guess, was I knew that they would be there because, they're purists. They went to the soundboard because that's where it sounded the best. And my dad still, when we go to Dead and Company shows, he's friends with, Derek Featherstone. And if he can talk his way onto the soundboard, he will, because, theoretically that's the spot.
Great last pick. Insane story.
Yeah, I felt like I just had to confess that. Now having had that experience at Dead shows, are like, wow, that space, Dead and Company or wherever, as an adult ingesting adult substances.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that really could have fucked with some people's head. I think that we need to get this out in the world.
Sam, I have a follow-up. I'm not sure if you recall, but do you actually remember the act of doing that? I'm wondering if you were somewhat methodical about it, even though as an 8-year-old, in my mind, you would just be, it's there's a button that you can push, so I'm going to push that button as many times. Were you just going crazy on the joystick, or do you think that you were were you visualizing it? I'm curious, given that sort of power, what you would have done as an 8-year-old.
No, I remember following it around the room. I remember, and you could go in circles, you could go side to side, back and forth. So I probably tried to take it seriously. That's my memory of it. Was listening for where it was in the room and then taking it to some other part of the room, which is pretty muddy power for an 8 and 9-year-old to wield, for sure.
Super cool. So again, these guys were right on your tail. Pete and CJ both guessed 92, so they were 1 year off. Aron was 2 years off at 91, which means Pete is the Heat number 3 champ of Guest of the Year. You go on to face Steve and Gavin in the finals next week. Congratulations, Pete. What were you hearing there? Did you hear Santana?
My first feeling when it first started, I was like, is this 1971? Where am I in this? And then I started to get my bearings on it, and saw a lot of the Grateful Dead between like 91 and 93. I probably saw like 60 Dead shows in those 3 years or something. So I was in the room a lot for spaces where they were moving all around. What Sam is talking about, I was in there going, is this my mind or is this actually happening? Right. So thanks, Sam. So there was honestly, it was really a recollection of like, I've been in this moment, like I've heard this, I've been in the room for this. So this is 90s. That's kind of what brought me there. And then I started to hear the keys, Vince's tones. And then I did hear a little bit of that Oye Como Va. And I was like, oh, they're just going into this. I didn't really pick up on Santana quite yet, but really cool pick. At that time, 92, 93, some of the best moments of Dead shows for me personally were entering and exiting Drums in Space were often the don't miss moments of a Grateful Dead show, at least for me. Like it was where the most improvisation was occurring, the most freedom occurred, and the complete like melt your face moments of a show. And so, I loved that stuff. So that was really cool, a really cool pick. I'll definitely go and check that show out.
Really well done. CJ, you also guessed 92. And when Sam said Santana, you're like, yes. Did you hear him there?
I did. Let's see. First of all, let me just say, Pete, way to go. I mean, Pete's tough. So it was my second time consecutively losing to Pete. And
that's right. Yeah.
And I remember Jay, who I was on my first show that I won with my friend Jay. Yeah. He said, shout out to Mike and the guys. And I said, man, this Pete guy is really tough. So yeah. So yeah, way to go, man. So yeah, with the Santana, I think it was the show I was on with Aron, and that was Sue, that was the curator, and she picked, wasn't it a Not Fade Away with Santana from the 80s, like around 82, and I didn't know whether to go like into the 80s or back a little bit into the 70s, and I got way off on that one. But yeah, but I right away heard Vince along with it, so I knew it was 90s. And earlier today, I just on my way home, I put it on the Sirius Dead Archive channel, and I can on my app, I can on the steering wheel, I can skip. So I would hit skip and not look at the display and listen, make my guess and then look. And I was getting them right, and I heard TC clear as a bell, like boom, 69. It was January 2nd, 1970, and I went, that's how they're gonna get me. So
yes, I know.
That's how they got me.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it was fun, man. Yeah. Good job, guys.
Thanks, CJ. Any good bird sightings? Or shout out Jay, by the way, and shout out Sue. But any good bird sightings as of late?
Yeah, so it's been really, really good lately. Matter of fact, Jay texted me the other day. He saw some broadwing hawks migrating down where he was working. And I've seen and heard a couple of different owls. I had short-eared owl and an eastern screech owl right up here near my place. I live in northern Wyoming. I'm originally from Ohio, but been living in northern Wyoming for 16 years. So yeah, the fall migration has been pretty good to us, even though we've been, pretty dry. And we did have just a couple of weeks ago, we did have a fire on the mountain, and I'm on the volunteer department, so I had to go help with that. But we were pretty lucky for fire season compared to what's been going on all around us, especially on the northeastern side of Wyoming. There's been way too many fires over there. So it's been a wild season, and I'll be glad when it starts snowing. And that means pretty soon we'll be on skis again. But yeah, thanks for bringing up the birds again. And I guess before my time's done, can I just say a quick shout out to my daughter, Emmy, who's been, she's 11. And since she was born, I would sing bird song to her as a lullaby. And, so she knows the Grateful Dead very well. I don't think she'd probably call herself a Deadhead, but just wanted to say hey to my daughter, and hope she carries that with her through the rest of her life.
Hey, shout out Emmy and Althea. Thanks, CJ. Pleasure as always. Aron, you guessed 91.
Sam, on top of the cruelty of space, you throw in a guest guitarist. Like, I really don't know what else. Like, if there's a third element that you could put in to make it impossible, but that's as hard as it gets. So, thanks.
I wonder who else would have sat in on a space jam other than Santana, right? I mean, that like That relationship
right.
that they had, that he had with the band. I mean, you get people sitting in all the time, but I guess, maybe one of the horn players or something would have been another person that sat in on a Space Jam. They didn't like let everybody do that. They didn't give everybody that leash,
Aron, where can people follow your photography Instagram, which has been on fire lately?
Thank you very much. So my Instagram account is a Richard Photo. I know that doesn't pair up with my real name, and yes, there's a story behind it. But basically, when I started photography, there was a fairly famous Canadian photographer who was, shot for a lot of the national newspapers. His name is Aron Harris, although he spells his name with 2 A's. And there's just no way around it. Like every single Google search would always go back to him. And so my initials are ARH. And I was like, that's pretty good. So ARH Photo. Except there's a big photo lab in California called ARH Photo. So I always joke, like the actor F. Murray Abraham, I wanted to be referred to as A. Richard Harris. So I just threw photo in on the end of it, and that's stuck. And
perfect.
So it's A. Richard Photo.
Awesome. Well, thank you, all three of you. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam, for sharing, the stories and these great tracks.
Well, look, any listener of this show listens and goes and curates a set list in their mind all the time. So this was a dream come true. I'm really grateful and had a blast. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much, Sam. The Winemakers Podcast, link in the show notes. Thank you, 16600 Winery, for providing this week's prize pack. Hooking Pete up. The winery is, look at the reviews online. Don't even take my word for it. Look at the reviews online. It's like everyone's ecstatic about it. Aron's Instagram account is also linked in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening. For all the show links, including our YouTube channel, go to guesttheyear.net. If you want to be a contestant on season 3 of the show, sponsor the show, or make comments and ask questions, email us at info@guesttheyear.net. Shout out to Dylan for drawing the poster and James and Jack for helping out behind the scenes. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks to the amazing tapers whose recordings made this show possible. Congratulations to Pete for moving on to the Tournament of Champions final. And to our other contestants, thanks for playing. And remember, it's all one song anyway.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night. And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.